Last time we talked about the 6 days of creation and what God created on each day. We read through the first chapter in the Bible, Genesis 1, where God tells us what He did, how He did it, and He even gives us clear evidence of the timing. We talked about how organized God is, another evidence of His wisdom and intelligence. Let's do a quick review of Creation Week. On day 1, He created the earth, light, and time, day and night. Then, on day 4, He created the sun, moon, and stars to help us count that time and to have light over the day, which is the sun, and over the night, which is the moon. On day 2, God created the atmosphere by separating the clouds or waters above from the oceans or waters below. Then, on day 5, He created the birds of the air and the fish of the oceans. On day 3, God created the vegetation on the land and the food it provides. Then, on day 6, He created the land animals, the bugs, and the humans to live on that land and eat the food it provides. Looking at the intricacy of each thing created on each day, we can see clear evidence of intelligence, wisdom, design, and intention. So at the end of day 6 of Creation Week, we see that everything has been created. The environment for each living thing, each living being God made has been perfectly tailored to the needs of each being. Does anyone remember what God said when He finished creating at the end of day 6? God called it all very good. We talked last time about the original Hebrew meaning of very good. The Hebrew word for good means excellent, valuable, and happy. Could there be any decay, sickness, betrayal, hurt, or death if everything was excellent, valuable, and happy? It is important to remember that God's original design for all things was perfection. Each creation was made in its perfect form and specified for a distinct purpose. It is also important to not only think of the word excellent, but also the word valuable. God clearly values all that He created. That truth is wrapped up in the words, very good. Let's consider this true story of creation as a zoomed-out version. Each thing listed as it was created. Today, we're going to read Genesis chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a zoomed-in detail of the final thing God created. Do you remember what that was? God finished all His creation work with the creation of mankind. Have you ever heard the saying, save the best for last? Well, that is exactly what God did. Genesis chapter 2 will give us a better picture and understanding of just how special mankind was created in God's original design. Before we jump into the details of Genesis 2, I want us to understand that when we look at what the Bible says and we hear contradicting information telling us this is not reality, it's just a story, or something along those lines, we have to remember what our foundation is. Let me show you what I mean. We can always find different perspectives on which to build the foundation of what we think about something. Let's look at some optical illusions for a moment to find out what each of us sees. Do you see a chair facing inward or a chair facing outward? Do you see people standing on a beach near a tree, or do you see a baby? Do you see overlapping rings or a slinky-like tunnel? Do you see the cow's face and eyes, but do you also see the silhouettes of two people? Do you see an old woman or a young woman? Do you see a family sitting in a living room, talking, or a family under a tree with a woman with something on her head? Often what we see is based on our worldview or our life experience. A family in Western civilization would likely see a family in a living room. But a family from a very different culture, like maybe somewhere in Africa, would likely see a family under a tree and a woman carrying a box of something on her head. There are two ways to see this picture. Depending on how you look at the picture, You can see something different even though it's the same picture. How we see something is directly related to our idea of why the world is the way it is. Some people believe different things about what happened in the past. There are two main ideas about the history of our universe. The first idea comes from the 66 books we call the Bible. Do you remember who wrote the Bible? God wrote the Bible. He used human people to do the writing, but he inspired the words that they wrote. Who was the only living person at the time the world and the universe began, according to the Bible? God was the only person. God is the only eyewitness. Can God lie to us? No, he can't. Do we know why not? Well, as we saw in Genesis chapter 1, whatever God says becomes reality. Therefore, he cannot lie. The second view of origins is very different than what the Bible says. Have you heard that a man shares an ancestor with apes and monkeys?